What is the real plan for the Dallas Mavericks when it comes to Anthony Davis's potential return as the Mavericks look to try to make the play-in? We'll be joined by our national NBA insider, Marc Stein, on today's episode of the DLLS Mavs Podcast. Here we go. Hey, what's up, DLLS Mavs Nation? It's your man, Kevin Gray, alongside Mavericks beat writer Tim Cato, Mavericks analyst Bobby Carella. We are DLLS Mavs. We appreciate you joining us here on DLLS Sports. What is the real plan for Anthony Davis and the Dallas Mavericks as he gets ready for his return? Plus, we'll be joined by our national NBA insider, Marc Stein, momentarily here, as well as Bobby. Breaking things on the set already.
If you don't want to be on the show, you can just tell us.
Show.
I'm just trying my best.
Well, you know what? If he doesn't want to be, Tanner, we can replace him with John P., who says that he got his official diehard membership card.
Let's go.
Yesterday. And that means I'm pretty sure that allows you to show up to the studio unannounced.
Crack of the can.
And rifle through the fridge. I think I saw it in the fine print.
No, it does mean that.
It does.
Come show up. There's a reason. Now, you have to find the studio.
Yes,
you have to find our
figure out where we are.
Entrance to the studio.
That's
which
right.
Is no easy feat.
But if you figure all that out, your diehard membership card absolutely gets you access to
be fair,
cranberry lime unbranded sparkling water that doesn't sponsor us.
We also did kind of dox ourselves on the Star Show the other day when there was a dumpster on fire mere feet away from our studio.
That's right.
So there are context clues available. Happy hunting.
It's still on fire, so just look for the smoke.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you could say it's at the American Airlines Center, but I digress because we got a lot to get into on today's show. As I mentioned, our national NBA insider will be joining us for not one but two segments of the Stein line today when it comes to the plan for Anthony Davis and Quentin Grimes. My gosh, cooking for the Philadelphia 76ers. Did he actually request out Dallas? We'll get the answers to that question a little bit later on, but a legend has continued to make his thoughts known when it comes to the Luka Doncic trade. That, of course, is one Dirk Nowitzki, number 41, 21 seasons, all with the Dallas Mavericks 2011 NBA champion, spoke on the 41 Campus podcast with his sister a couple of days ago, discussing the Luka Doncic trade, where he said, I quote, "I don't think anyone saw it coming that the Mavs would ever trade Luka. So for me, it was totally unexpected. Completely out of nowhere. I was so stunned that I just put everything aside. We were supposed to go for a quick lunch with the family before flying out, but instead I sat in my room for an hour scrolling through X trying to figure out if it was real," end quote. Just some of the comments from Dirk Nowitzki, who continues to obviously be stunned by the trade that took place. Also, Dirk Nowitzki going to be jumping on with Amazon Prime Video next season as a commentator and analyst for their NBA coverage. So a lot of different things happening for Dirk coming over the next several weeks and months. But, gentlemen, your reaction to Dirk Nowitzki, who obviously has continued to make his feelings known about the organization when it comes to the trade of Luka Doncic.
Well, I think that we're not even sharing fully everything that he just said. Do you want to do that now? Do you have first reactions?
No, yeah. I mean, I think what he said after that was pretty juicy and made me very sad.
So there's a thread from a German-speaking Mavericks fan about this podcast. There's an interview in German, which is why we're not playing clips of it. I'm just not far enough in my lessons. But Dirk Nowitzki had so numerous times this thread says he calls the trade insanity. So I did check, and this is the only thing from the thread that I want to add a little bit of context on. Insanity, it's the word I believe was heißt. I can double check it, but basically that word directly does translate to insanity or madness, but it's used in the same context for German speakers as like, oh my God, this is crazy. So it's different than saying this is crazy. He's just saying, or like that was a crazy thing or that was a crazed thing to do. Like crazy for us is, just like this word is a little bit softer than how the translation came across. Other than that, when I checked, this stuff is relatively it's accurate. It's an accurate summary. And Dirk said that he hasn't been involved with the Mavericks in the past 2 years. He said that the reasons for the trade could only be about Luka's preparations, not about his play. Makes sense. He said it was strange and bizarre to watch Luka play, in a Lakers jersey. And he said the current situation with all the injuries is the new reality as a Mavericks fan. It will take time to live with. He said Cuban has little to no influence on anything. And then Dirk seemed to imply some criticism directed at Cuban. He said Cuban had to expect that this would happen when he sold the majority share. He said, Dirk said, last year things developed into that direction, and now we see how everything panned out. Damn.
One of the words in German that I actually know, and I'm going to do my best to pronounce it, it is gefährlich, which means dangerous. It's a dangerous
vaccine or something close to that was the
it's a dangerous situation that the Mavs are in right now. Obviously with the fans and with everything going on, but the spookiest, saddest thing about it for me is that Dirk is confirming what a lot of people kind of already suspect, but some people have known for a while, which is like he's just not really involved with this franchise anymore. And once he retired in 2019, he did take a couple years to himself to go travel the world, spend time with his family, spend time with his kids, visit his and his wife's family who live in 3 different countries. And he spent a lot of time traveling, living it up. He went skiing. He just had a great time.
Well earned.
Yeah, and he talked about
he finally had one beer.
Yeah, he enjoyed some ice cream, and Dirk was able to kind of live his life. And
he actually found out about this news in the Maldives.
Yeah, in the Maldives, on a vacation.
Yeah, so still enjoying it to some extent, but
for sure, yeah. And right around the time that he was starting to get an itch, he was starting to get a little bored, he wanted to get back to work, was right around the same exact time that the Mavs' last regime kind of fell apart. Donnie, Rick, Bob all leave. Cuban eventually did as well, and a lot of other staffing changes happened. And Dirk, that is when he came back. He was a little bored, but he also feels like it's his duty as the steward and the face of this franchise to try and do what's best for the franchise. Now, he was a proponent of hiring J. Kidd as head coach, so if you hate J. Kidd, then, I hope you don't blame Dirk for that too much.
I would say not even a proponent, but involved in the decision.
Sure, yeah.
Part of the brain trust.
Yeah, and, Dirk isn't batting 1,000 lifetime. He missed game winners, and he lost finals, so, it's not like he's a perfect soul.
Rajon Rondo.
But you could never, ever, ever question Dirk's loyalty and commitment to the organization. But in light of not only the team sale, but also some of the decisions that have been made at the highest levels of this organization over the last few years, it's just kind of rubbed him the wrong way. And he doesn't, I don't want to speak for the guy, but clearly based on his actions and some of his words, I don't think he really feels like he wants to be a part of it. I don't think he wants to be maybe a member of the front office, either in name only or in actual work. I don't really think that he identifies with this thing anymore. And I mean, he said it himself. He'll always be a Mavs fan, but he didn't say he'll always be a Mav. And like that's a big thing, man. And like Dirk is my guy. Dirk is like the foremost role model in my life, the person I looked up to. A hero in many respects for not just me, but for a lot of people that grew up watching Dallas sports. And so to see this kind of distancing happening and to see him acknowledging it now is, it sucks. It sucks so much. It really bums me out. It makes me very, very sad. But also, I never doubt that man's moral compass, And if Dirk is doing this, then I trust that he thinks it's the right thing to do. And that also bums me out because I think he's right.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. It does feel, and I don't want to speak for him. I don't know exactly the dynamics, but it does feel like it's somewhat his choice to distance himself from the Mavericks to some extent based off this regime. I don't know what type of role he would have or what type of influence he would have if he was trying to actively be involved with this team right now. I do wonder that if the franchise had not gone in this direction in terms of leadership and vision. I wonder if he would be announcing Amazon games next year. I wonder if there was a Mavs role that he would have loved to have that now is just for perhaps personal and external, like internal and external reasons, is not something he's interested in now. I don't know.
That's a sobering thought. Just to hear the two of you, especially obviously Bobby, who used to work in the organization. So, having been close and intimate with the, folks that are there, but obviously having watched the entirety, Tim, you as well, the entirety of Dirk's career, that a superstar of this caliber who has given the entirety of his career and his professional life to an organization, to feel like at this stage in his career, after being inducted into the Hall of Fame and being celebrated as one of the best players to ever play the game, that the organization that he grew up with, now he has to feel like he has to distance himself because of not just the decisions that the organization has made, but the way that the organization has gone about making those decisions, to not be a part of it for the better part now of 2 years. If anything, of a new ownership group, at least in my opinion, you would want to do at the very beginning, one of the first things you would want to do is to embrace the guy that made this franchise as relevant as he did for the 21 years that he was here, and ensure that he was part of the very fabric of the future of the organization going forward, knowing the place that he has, not just with the Mavericks, but within DFW sports as a legend. That would be one of the top priorities of any new ownership group, I would think, coming in, to ensure that that man has a place and a seat at the table, no matter what his role is, as an ambassador, as a team official, whatever the case may be. For that to be the case now, to me, is very saddening, given the gravitas of a Dirk Nowitzki and what he has done, not just for this Mavericks organization, but for the entire city and the game of basketball in and of itself, to be in that place. That is that's very sad.
I think that's the thing that keeps striking me, is that Nico Harrison's vision to build a defensive and Nike focused roster is not inherently flawed or wrong. I think that if the team had been healthy, they would have been a very good team. We can debate how good, but he came to the Mavericks. He told friends, he told people around around him in his life, when he made the decision to come join Dallas, that a big reason why he took this job was Luka Doncic. And to choose to take this job because of Luka, and then to choose that because of Luka, but also what Luka meant to the franchise, and then to go against everything that this franchise did represent something. It was not a perfect franchise. It was far from it. But it did represent something. And that, to me, is the thing that, if you wanted to implement this vision in a different way with a different team, that's a completely different scenario. And to do it in Dallas is just, I think that's still what's most devastating to so many of these fans.
Well, I do want to, make it clear that Dirk's decreased or lack of involvement is not in response to just the Luka trade. Like KG said, Dirk said, this has been going on for multiple years now, and that is true.
It's a reaction to the people who have left the franchise.
Yeah, and
really, really mostly that. Yeah.
There were a lot of changes made over the last couple of years from the very top of the organization. This is even before the sale of the team to the Adelson family and Patrick Dumont as the acting governor. And I think change can be good. I think there were a lot of people that were involved with the organization for a long time who I respect greatly and who I got to know very well and who I think are great people. And it really bummed me out whenever some of those people, either by their own volition or not, weren't working for the team anymore. And Dirk saw that happening, and I think, he kind of felt the way at that point that many fans did after the Mavs traded Luka, which is suddenly like, this doesn't feel like my organization anymore. This doesn't feel like my Mavs anymore. And that's as a fan. Dirk is a fan, also an employee, also a player, but he's a fan, and he's part of this thing in the way that many of us are. And so I think looking at it like, this is not only is this is beyond change. This is changing the entire fabric, in some ways like erasing or undoing past deeds, damaging goodwill actively,
and maybe permanently for some people.
Yeah, and like that just, That just sucks. Now, this isn't a new thing. It's been 2 years. That part has sucked for 2 years. But obviously, with everything that's gone on now, he finally felt comfortable talking about it. And that also sucks. I don't want to ever think about Dirk Nowitzki as something other than a Maverick, and now all of a sudden we live in a world where we kind of have to, and I just don't like that.
And real quick, before we go to break, he's going to be on Amazon talking a lot. The chance for some sort of rift, greater rift growing between Dirk and the franchises is plausible. I don't think that's what he wants, but he's also clearly on this podcast speaking his mind to some degree, and we'll see how that goes.
Let's take our first break here on the DLLS Mavs Podcast. When we come back, we'll welcome in our National NBA insider, Marc Stein. What is the plan for Anthony Davis and his return? And did Quentin Grimes actually ask out Dallas? We'll get to the answer to those questions and more coming up next year on the DLLS Mavs Podcast. But first, let me talk to you about Own Well. It is that time of the year when property taxes are due. You get that dreaded letter in the mail when you see what your property value is and what tax you got to pay. And then you got to maybe file a protest to ensure that you make sure you get the things that you need to get done when it comes to owning your home. Because I own a home, and owning property can be challenging. Overpaying on property taxes, never anything that you want to do, and it should be one of those things that you have to worry about. You know that you can fight your property taxes and save thousands of dollars every year with Own Well. With Own Well, they handle everything from start to finish as well, delivering top results. There's no upfront cost. You only pay if you save as well. 86% of Own Well's customers receive a reduction of over $1,100. So remember, the deadline to protest is May 15th for most counties. You can save money on your property taxes with Own Well. Sign up in less than 3 minutes and start your protest today at ownwell.com/DLLS. Again, that's ownwell.com/DLLS.
The weather these next few days, 80, sunny, 64, sunny, 64, sunny, 75, sunny. Folks, spring has sprung. It is bright outside, and the sun is only going to get brighter over the course of the next 6 months or so. And so you need to get ready with quality shades built to last from our friends at Shady Rays. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company. They offer you a world-class product that's been rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. They got hundreds of options to choose from. Whenever I was choosing mine, it was like one of the toughest decisions I've ever had to make in my life. But, hey, I can just go buy more because they're offering a great promo that I'll tell you about in a second. But, hey, if you order something, if you make up your mind you want a pair and you don't like them, return them. If you lose them or if you damage them because you're a clumsy jabroni like me, they will replace them. They have the best eyewear protection in the whole game. But I promise you are going to love them because I love mine. Exclusively for our listener, Shady Rays, giving out their best deal ever. Head to shadyrays.com. Use code DLLS for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people.
Appreciate all of you joining us here on the DLLS Mavs Podcast. Let's welcome in our guest here on the show. You can find him on X at The Steinline. He's our national NBA insider for the All City Network and for DLLS Sports. He is, of course, Marc Stein. Marc, what's going on?
Gentlemen, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Marc.
Good to see you. How are we feeling on this terrific Tuesday, sir?
I'm all right. A little frustrated by my ongoing mic travails, but
You sound great.
You sound good.
No, you sound good.
You sound good.
You're lit very dramatically. I got to say, it is.
Yeah,
it is a great
the
situation.
side light profile right now is giving very cryptic, is what it's doing right now.
is it dark? Is it too dark?
No, it's perfect.
Like you're giving us, real Harvey Dent, vibes right now.
Yeah,
with the
no, it's
whole,
great.
What you're doing there. So,
Am I capturing the mood of the chat?
You are. We did
I
just
don't
talk
know.
about Dirk not being part of this thing for 15
It
minutes.
depends on what
I'm
you
ready
heard
to
it,
have a
though.
cry.
I heard it. I was listening.
real quick before we get to the Anthony Davis, I mean, just your quick reaction to those comments from Dirk and what he's had to say in terms of his involvement with the organization and everything else.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, I don't think any of it's a surprise. My frustration is just I don't speak German. And so I really would want to hear it in German. I would like to hear, he did it with his sister Silke, but like, I don't know the questions that were asked. Like, I mean, it's hard for me to talk about an interview that's in a language that I don't speak. And that thread was great that Tim referenced. It's great to have the thread from the German speaking Mav fan, but it was, there wasn't a lot of context added. But I mean, look, I think we know we heard Dirk speak in English about this when he made the live appearance at the ticket. This is not something he had any advance warning on. This is not something he would have done. And yeah, I mean, the fact that look, he's going into TV because, again, to my surprise, he really wants to go into TV. Like, that is something that is a lane that really appeals to him. It's new ground. And like I said, if you would have asked me 5 years ago, I wouldn't have forecasted it. And when I asked Dirk if he would have expected it, even he said no. So, I mean, I think it is somewhat surprising that that's what he wants to do. But I mean, I'm telling you guys, like when I asked him about it and talked to him about TV, he is very gung-ho about moving into that space. But yeah, I mean, he was an advisor to Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban sold the Mavericks in late November 2023. Dirk has not been an advisor to the new ownership. He hasn't. He's been at some games. I mean, you always see him on the Jumbotron because he loves the Mavs, and he occasionally comes to games when, he's nearby and in town. But, it's a whole new world now. And the only game he's been to recently was Luka's debut. So there you go.
I was about to break out into the Disney song, A Whole New World, but I'll digress because we got a show to do.
Luka's Laker debut, to be clear.
That's right. Speaking of the Lakers, Anthony Davis's former team, Anthony Davis potentially on his way back. What is the latest when it comes to Anthony Davis and a potential return, and what that plan looks like based on your latest understanding and information?
So you guys saw yesterday, the Mavs announced they sent both Anthony Davis and Jaden Hardy to the G League to get a 5-on-5 practice in. That practice was yesterday. AD came through the practice with no issues. Jaden Hardy and Kai Jones also participated. I reported at some point yesterday afternoon, both Jaden Hardy and Kai Jones are in contention to play tomorrow at Indianapolis. I think the likelihood is that one or both will be active and available. Anthony Davis is not in contention to play against the Pacers. He still has more on-court work to do, but something else I reported yesterday. Look, Anthony Davis really wants to play. There is no question about that. He wants to come back before this season ends. Now, does that mean he will? That remains a TBD, because I guess the best way I can describe it, there are people close to the situation that are not convinced that him coming back is a good idea. And it's not a matter of the injury he has. They're not going to let him on the court unless he proves that the injury he has is sufficiently healed enough for him to play. That's not the discussion here, but just the discussion is, since this Luka trade, I think the Mavs understand this as acutely as anyone. Everything that could go wrong for this team has gone wrong. And in that kind of vibe, do you want to bring Anthony Davis back and just risk anything bad happening to him when you already know that next season you're starting the season without Kyrie Irving? If it was me, if I was making the call, Anthony Davis would not play again this season. Derek Lively would not play again this season. And I don't think Daniel Gafford will be healed in time to play again before the play-in round. So I wouldn't bring back any of these guys because I've seen enough. I've seen enough bad stuff happen, and I don't want to see anything else bad happen. But there are people close to the situation who also do believe that Anthony Davis should come back and play a few games. So we really don't know yet what will happen, but that's where we are.
I guess the question I would have would be, if that is the case, we'll go with the latter portion of what you discussed there. Anthony Davis to play games for what reason exactly, given the state that this team is in and what they're potentially moving toward? What would be accomplished by getting Anthony Davis on the floor for these kinds of games?
I can't speak for Anthony Davis. I have not asked him about this directly. I haven't had the chance. I would love to speak to Anthony Davis. I've not been close enough to Anthony Davis to lob him a question since he did post-game after his Mavs debut on February 8th. It has been expressed to me very clearly that he badly wants to come back before the season ends. I would assume, and again, this is underlined my assumption, my read. This is not reporting because, again, I haven't spoken to Anthony Davis directly, and I don't want to act like I know everything. I would, my assumption is, he wants to get out and play because he understands that his new team is going through it right now, and he wants to show people again what he's capable of and try to deliver the kind of basketball we saw in the first half of that game on February 8th. Again, if it's me, I would not want that to happen. I don't want to take any more chances. We've seen enough bad stuff happen over the last 6 weeks, but I guess we're just going to have to wait and see how this plays out. As I understand it, Anthony Davis will be back on the court again this week, at least one more time, maybe twice. He's progressing toward a return before March is over. Will we actually see it? That I cannot give you that answer. I don't know.
Mark, this is some speculation on my part, but I do want to at least say this.
Yeah,
we kind of got into it yesterday. This line of thinking, but like there are so many bad things happening around this team right now. Health, everything that's happened over the last month and a half, you name it, the players are going through it. And I'm sure that there are players on the team that would love for AD to come back too. And so, even with all the risk in mind of either further re-aggravation or needing surgery or making something else, putting something else at risk because he's overcompensating or whatever the case is, like him coming back on the floor, I feel like would be a huge morale boost to the players who are also on the team, and like it's something for these guys to hold on to when it feels like they've been drowning in an abyss for like a month and a half now.
Yeah. And they are going through it. And look, for the most part, this team has played incredibly hard under adverse circumstances and being very shorthanded for a long time. I mean, how many times have we said, look at the effort that this group mustered shorthanded? But I think we also saw in Houston when they lost Exum, where you could see the team almost say, we lost another guy. And the second half in Houston was not pretty. I think, again, I'm putting my amateur psychologist hat on because I was not in the locker room. But, to me, it's like, did the fact that they lost Exum weigh on the team in terms of, man, how can we get through a game without losing somebody? I mean, my read would be that, yeah, that played a part in a not very watchable second half.
My curiosity, and this is something you alluded to in one of your tweets, is just what is the chance of re-injury for Anthony Davis? Like, if there's any, that's the one scenario where it makes no sense to me. If they're putting him back out there, but still feel there's a chance he's going to re-injure himself.
No, and that's the thing is, I again, in a tweet is never enough space to fully explain it. The fear of re-injury, they're not going to. He's got to go through some further benchmarks. Again, he's going to be on the court at least twice more this week. He's got to pass more benchmarks to get cleared to play. That is the first thing that would have to happen. So if he doesn't pass those benchmarks, then he wouldn't even be in contention to play. But my sense is it's more just the fear of, because of this injury wave that is not let up since the Luka trade, even before the Luka trade, that it's more just let's be safe rather than sorry. I think that's more the concern that they would be leaning on. If the injury is not healed, he's not going to play again.
Right.
And again, he still has to pass a couple more benchmarks, I would say, before they clear him. He is not cleared to play. I think people saw, he's going down to the G League. He's playing Wednesday against the Pacers. He's not playing Wednesday against the Pacers. To my knowledge, he's not even traveling to Indiana. He's staying back here to continue working. So, like I said, I still think he's got some ground to cover to get clearance, but I don't think they're going to let him back on the court if they're not confident he can hack it. Like I said, to me, the fears are more, the way things are going, do we even want to take the chance?
And time is running out. I mean, there's 13 games left in the regular season, and by the time we get to the end of the weekend, this team could be behind Phoenix, who owns the tiebreaker already when it comes to the playoffs.
Do the Suns know that?
They do. They might start to get it together. They got 4 straight home games, starting with
their Martin brother is playing recently, and he's been doing okay for them.
That's right.
So.
Yeah, they smoked Toronto last night. They got Chicago tomorrow night as part of a 5-game homestand while the Mavericks take on the Pacers. So.
It would be amazing if we could have some sort of contest between DLLS Mavs, PHNX Suns, PHLY Sixers, even throw CHGO Bulls in there. Which show is immersed in more gloom right now with their team? Like it would be an interesting contest if there was a way to do it.
The answer is yes. That is the answer. The answer is yes. Let's take our next break here on the DLLS Mavs podcast. When we come back, we will have more with our national NBA insider, Marc Stein. Did Quentin Grimes actually ask out of Dallas, given what he is doing right now for the Philadelphia 76ers? We'll answer that question and more coming up next year on the DLLS Mavs podcast.
Started by 2 college friends, Saturday Neon makes officially licensed collegiate logo LED neon signs perfect for your home, office, dorm room, fan cave, bar, podcast studio, kitchen. You want to put it in your kitchen, car, put it in the backseat of your car, truck, RV, mobile home, small apartment, second apartment. Check out their new Essentials collection featuring almost 50 of the biggest schools across the country, starting at only $75. Unlike traditional neon, these LED signs won't break or shatter, but still give you that classic uniform glow that you know and love. The LEDs last up to 100,000 hours, so you'll be enjoying your sign for years to come, unless you're putting it in the backseat of the car and get rear-ended. So yeah, don't put it there. Put it in all the other places we listed. Head over to SaturdayNeon.com and use code DLLS for 10% off your newest favorite sign.
The wins have continued for Ya Boy on the Sleeper app. It's just been
Good
one
wins, bad wins,
dominant.
Wins are
It's been a dominant
wins.
stretch. It's been
I
a dominant
literally heard
stretch for me. You guys know every time I win, it's like a thunderstorm upstairs because I'm stomping, I'm running around, I'm doing cartwheels, backflips, the whole thing. It's great. And you can join me by putting your ball knowledge to the test every single night by picking whether your favorite or least favorite players will have more or less in their projected stat lines. And that's in all sports. It's basketball, hockey. Right now it's the college tournaments in both men's and women's. And so I'm sure there's going to be plenty of options there. Hey, baseball's starting up. They even do like Counter-Strike tournaments. It's incredible. And with Sleeper, the more picks you make, the more you combine, the more you can win, all the way up to 100 times your money. If you think you have what it takes, new users can download the Sleeper app and use the code DLLS Mavs to get $55 in free entries when you place a $5 contest. You can use them all at once. You can use them on any contest you like. Doesn't even have to be your first one. Check out Sleeper today.
Appreciate all of you joining us here on the DLLS Mavs podcast. Let's welcome back in our national NBA insider, Marc Stein. You can always dial up the Stein line at the Stein line on X as the Mavericks are off today before they take on Rick Carlisle and the Indiana Pacers tomorrow night. We'll see if Tyrese Halliburton is going to be available for the Pacers with an early start time at 6 p.m. on the road. Quentin Grimes, Marc Stein, continues to ball out for the Philadelphia 76ers. They lost last night as the Rockets had a 25-point comeback and one of the most entertaining and goofy games I have watched all season long. I was thoroughly entertained by what I watched between the Rockets and the Sixers last night. But Quentin Grimes, in 9 games in the month of March, averaging nearly 29 points per game, nearly 6 rebounds, nearly 5 assists per contest. He's got 2 40-point games, including a career-high 46 last night against the Rockets and 44 earlier this month in a win over the Golden State Warriors. And a lot of folks are obviously seeing what Grimes is doing, and obviously not in a Mavericks uniform. Let's just jump to it. Did Quentin Grimes ask out of Dallas to get himself to Philadelphia, given the context of the trades that took place before he was shipped out?
Based on my best information, the answer is no. I have checked it out because I knew you were going to ask me this stuff. In general, I am speechless watching the Quentin Grimes Player of the Month campaign for the month of March. I am without speech. What he has been doing is tremendous. I mean, even here Sunday, the Mavs tried to take the ball out of his hands and didn't want him to go off, didn't really have the personnel to do so, and he didn't. What do you have, 28 on Sunday? Is that
28?
Finished
That's
with?
right.
And then on a back-to-back to go for 46, I mean, to say he is feeling it is understating things dramatically. But I checked it out today. Based on my best information, he did not formally ask to be traded. But I would also say, like, I don't even think that would have mattered because the Mavericks wanted Caleb Martin. And I know this is a very unpopular thing to share at this point, but I'm doing my job. I'm sharing what I know about the situation. When they made the trade, there were defensible basketball reasons for making the trade. As we've been discussing since this show started in August, not too long after free agency concluded, the Mavs have had a significant hole in terms of wing defense, and they thought Caleb Martin would instantly become the best wing defender on the roster. And when they made the trade, Kyrie was not injured, and AD had not even made his Mavericks debut yet. And the Mavericks were thinking, in our playoff run, Caleb Martin is going to take on a massive role in terms of wing defense for the guys that we have to deal with on the wing and the guys that we have to try to stop now in the playoffs. The high scoring wings that you find all over the league. Now, everything that's happened, because again, that was the Mavs reasoning for the trade. Agree with it, disagree with it, you choose your choice. I'm just relaying what I was told at the time. And like I said, I was told at the time before this, cycle of catastrophes took place. But when you look at how the deal has worked out, I mean, the Mavs, as I reported at the time, they could have voided the trade. When they did the physical with Quentin Grimes, when they did the physical with Caleb Martin, they saw stuff with his hip that they didn't like. They had the option of waiving the trade, of voiding the trade then, of rescinding the trade, just like the Lakers did with Mark Williams. They decided not to. Philadelphia agreed to add a second-round pick to the trade construction. So the Mavs said, we're going to get a second-round pick. We're going to get Martin back in a month. We're going to go ahead and do this deal. The problem, of course, is in the space of that month, Martin had unlikely bonuses in his contract and a trade kicker in his contract. He was never going to waive the trade kicker because, remember, he got less last summer than he was hoping for. He turned down a richer deal from the Heat, thinking he could do better on the open market. Did not. Ended up taking the deal he got from the Sixers, but it was less than the Heat were offering. So there's no way he was going to waive his trade bonus. And the unlikely bonuses in his contract that the Mavericks had to pay, that's because they were hard capped from the summer when they signed and traded to acquire Clay and sign Naji-Marshall. So when you're an apron team, those bonuses count. There's nothing you can do about it. But because of all the injuries since, that ended up having a dramatic effect on the Mavs roster business because they are literally not allowed to spend more than $51,000 and change on new salary for the rest of the season. So they can't bring in anybody. They couldn't even keep Moses Brown beyond his first 10 days. So it's turned out to be disastrous because Caleb Martin missed a month. He's barely played. And on top of everything, Quentin Grimes has gone to a level that I don't know that the biggest Quentin Grimes fan in the world could have imagined, but chapeau to Quentin Grimes. He has been ridiculous. He has been sensational. We gave him his props early in the season when he responded really well to a DNP CD early in the season and then quickly became a key rotation contributor. But the man is seizing his opportunity in Philly with as much aplomb as you can muster and has become an incredible story. And seriously, the Sixers won't win enough for him to be player of the month in March, but something tells me that when the league announces the player of the month for March and when they have the list of other nominees, Grimes' name will be on there because he should be on there. He should.
Yeah, and we're about to talk about Grimes a little bit more in our final segment, but just you mentioned the DMP that he got, and my impression of that situation was that both Grimes and Najee started slow. They took a little bit to adapt to the team, but my impression was that Grimes was doing or believing he could do a lot of what he's now doing in Philly. There was a lot of moments leading up to that DMP where he was trying to be an ISO scorer. He was, you could argue, and at times the turnovers, and the missed shots showed that, he was, biting off more than the role that Dallas saw for him. And I think when he came back, there was still a hesitancy. Even he had good games, but I always felt like there was a hesitancy from Jason Kidd to fully play him past the role that he envisioned for him. I don't know if you have any thoughts or info or feelings about that, but when the trade happened, all of that seemed to make sense to me, that a player who felt like they should be doing more in Dallas than what Dallas wanted him to do. And again, he is obviously showing why he felt that way here in Philly. It felt like there was a disconnect between, the player and the role.
I mean, I got to say, from my seat, it was more about Caleb Martin representing a player that they didn't have on the roster, but also crucially, and I left this part out before, and it cannot be left out. Caleb Martin is signed to a multi-year deal at sub $8 million a year. And that's the price range that the Mavericks wanted to appropriate to that role. And Quentin Grimes clearly had aspirations for more in free agency, which is why they didn't come to a deal in October when Grimes was still eligible for a rookie scale contract extension up to the day before opening night. So the fact that Martin was a good wing defender, a proven wing defender with a playoff resume, and signed to the kind of deal already that Dallas would have liked to have signed Grimes, those are the reasons to me that Caleb Martin had such strong appeal to the Mavericks. To me, my read, it was not about what Quentin Grimes wasn't doing, because look, I want to be clear, Quentin Grimes is a absolutely undeniable, unquestionable player of the month candidate for March. He has been tremendous. But you do have to say he is getting opportunities offensively that he wouldn't have even gotten in Philly if Embiid and Paul George and Maxey were playing. I mean, he is taken full advantage of the opportunity. But the Sixers did not make this trade thinking they were getting a player who was capable of scoring 46 on the second night of a back-to-back in Houston. I mean, let's be honest. Did the Sixers think that this would be happening? I don't think so, because I mean, now they're the ones in the tough spot. I mean, Quentin Grimes is going to be a restricted free agent, and can Philly re-sign him? What kind of offer is he going to generate with the offensive skills that he's putting on display right now?
Do you know why Dallas was the team? I mean, obviously, why Dallas was the team that sent out the second round pick after they came back to the trade when Martin's medicals came back. Dallas got a second round pick out of it, but up to that point, given the scenario, why was it Dallas that was sending out the second?
They should have just kept the pick.
Should have kept it.
Well, look, I was not in the room for the negotiations, but I think that also speaks to how badly Dallas wanted Caleb Martin. Because again, at that point, Kyrie is playing. At that point, AD has not played yet. The Mavericks they had just made this very controversial trade and announced to the world, we're in the game to win a championship now. They did not feel like they had enough defense on the wing to win a championship now. And they thought Caleb Martin was going to fill that void, that Caleb Martin would be the top flight wing defender that you throw at the wing scorers who caught, the Ant Edwards of the world who give you so much trouble. The Mavs felt like they didn't have a guy to guard those kind of players. And that was supposed to be Caleb Martin. And obviously I think Max Christie would have gotten that opportunity as well. But, Caleb Martin filled that role for a team that went to the NBA Finals in 2023. So that is my read of what the Mavs were thinking. But again, that pick is an excellent pick. And I totally get what you're saying. And I know a lot of Mavs fans are furious. Why was such a valuable trade asset that looks like it's going to be in the 35 range? Why did Philly get that? But when the trade was made,
I can't give a straight face when you said that.
What did I say? What did I say that made you guys
Just
laugh?
like
The fact that that's going to be the 35th or 36th pick, and they want
that's a very valuable pick.
like the
I get why
idea.
people are mad.
Again, your read, the idea that they wanted Caleb Martin so badly that they was willing to smoke away a top 35 pick in order to do it. Woo!
I
That's
remember,
a lot to take in. That's a lot to take in.
I remember hearing like 2 years ago, before all this, like someone was talking about Nico, and it was I think it was said in a complimentary way at the time. Was like, Nico will do a lot to get the guys he wants.
Which baseline, I do respect that. I
have some level of respect for that.
Yeah,
It's
no,
worked
for
with
sure.
players like PJ Washington.
Yeah, I respect it when it's good. I
Kyrie.
respect it when it's bad. But like, man,
But man,
Well,
the
what
player they
I'm
wanted
what
was
I'm
Caleb
saying is, I'm giving my best. I'm giving my best read of what I think it is. I was not in the negotiations.
Sure.
I was not in the room, and obviously, with the benefit of hindsight, it looks terrible to surrender an asset of that quality, and because of what Grimes has become. And when you think about the Tim Hardaway Jr. trade, looked so good initially because the Mavs couldn't have signed Klay Thompson without foisting Tim Hardaway Jr.'s contract upon Detroit. But the fact that they also got Grimes in that deal made that deal look so good. And now here we are 6, 7, 8 months later, and Grimes has been sent away in a deal that, it's an exaggeration to say that it has Mavs fans as upset as the Luka deal, but it certainly has. I feel like I'm reading as much about the Quentin Grimes trade in terms of fan dismay as I am about the trade.
Yeah, folks have been offering up takes that might not have been the worst trade that was made by the Mavericks, given what has happened.
very rarely do you give up the best player and the best pick in the same trade.
Woo!
Very rarely has that
For
ever
a
happened.
dude with a bad hip.
But honest question: when the trade was made, were people looking at it that way?
I said on the trade deadline special, I don't like giving up the pick, but I do see why they did. Why you would trade Grimes for Martin. I absolutely saw that.
I saw the logic, and again, I have some thoughts on Grimes that we'll get into next segment. But I saw the logic of the player swap specifically. I questioned the pick from the very outset.
Yeah, same.
The player in the context of the move that had been made prior to it, and what we had come to find out about the plan of Nico Harris.
I think we all felt like Grimes was the better player, that Martin might be the better fitting player. I'm not sure I believe that now, but again, I know we got to get to a break, and then we'll come back to it.
Yep.
Mark, we appreciate you as always. Terrific stuff today, and we will talk to you tomorrow here on the DLLS Mavs postgame show. Appreciate you.
See you guys in studio tomorrow night.
Bye, Mark.
That is our National NBA insider, Marc Stein. You can always dial at the Stein line on X at the Stein line. Let's take our final break here on the DLLS Mavs podcast. When we come back, would Quentin Grimes be doing this in even a more limited role with the Dallas Mavericks? We'll discuss that and more coming up next on the DLLS Mavs podcast.
But first, Die Hard time. Thank you to every single one of you that signed up during the little flash show we had last week for free agency, and also everyone that signed up in the month of March. We've had more than 200 people sign up to become diehards joining the DLS family just in the month of March alone. Thank you so very much for supporting what we do here, whether you're becoming a diehard or just watching us on YouTube, hanging out in the chat, maybe not liking some of the things that we're talking about, but at least liking the stream. I really do appreciate that. It's been a lot of bad news lately, so I cannot blame you for having issue with a lot of this stuff.
And that's the thing. I mean, I hear that a lot of Mavericks fans who are still very loyal to the team, who are still following podcast episodes, they they're still frustrated. It doesn't mean that they just want to hear, but they're still following.
Oh,
even though they're very frustrated about everything going down.
That's incredible, man. That's incredible.
Where might you find more info about something like that?
On the website or on the Discord server. And you get access to both whenever you become a diehard. You also get a free shirt right when you sign up. You get a discount on any other merch. You get a discount on events. So we got an event coming up next month for all my golfers out there. I'm not one of you. I can't golf. Joe Hoyt in the background just
tell
absolutely
him something, Joe.
Hogging right now because we're having a golf tournament at Stevens Park, which I hear is an incredible golf course. Joe Hoyt gives it 2 thumbs up just off screen. And Jeff Wilson, whenever we told Jeff Wilson he's a big golfer, he was like, "Oh my god!" Like he was like, "Whoa!"
It was super exciting.
Visceral reaction. So if you want to join that, you don't have to be a diehard to go, but you do save money if you're a diehard whenever you sign up. So check out our website. There'll be a link to that. On our website, you also get to get your physical diehard card.
Physical diehard card.
Already talked about the Discord. Already talked about the site. Tim's got some more stuff coming on the site very soon.
Stuff up on the site right now.
Oh my God!
That's what he was referring to with his piece. That's what he was referring to.
Oh my goodness gracious!
You totally missed that.
Yeah, completely. I was like,
story
Bobby's
we
not
talked
catching.
about yesterday.
I thought you were talking about
Tim is putting down right
the
now.
Discord. My bad.
No, even Mavericks fans still loyal.
There's
after
just
the
so
Dodgers
much
trade,
stuff I
struggle with
can't
its
keep up with it.
ramifications.
Wow, you should become a diehard today.
I was like, he was missing it completely because I knew exactly what you were talking about. I was like, Bobby's not picking it up. Not at all.
That's okay.
Not at all. It's been a lot of that around here.
Okay, we keep moving.
That's right. When it comes to other teams.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Let's finish up here on the DLLS Mavs podcast. With Quentin Grimes be doing this in even a limited role with the Dallas Mavericks, as we mentioned, has been cooking in the month of March, averaging nearly 30 a game, got a 46-point game, got a 44-point game. Stephen Curry, as Quentin Grimes has been balling out since leaving the Dallas Mavericks. We heard our Marc Stein say, to the best of his knowledge, that Quentin Grimes did not ask out when it came to a trade here in Dallas, which is
but he was expendable. And that's, I think, the question that I asked Mark was, it's not that Dallas didn't appreciate what his role was off the bench. It's that they didn't see him as anything else than that. That's all they saw him as. They didn't see him as a player worth more money than they offered him before the season. And so, it just was very clear that to go get a Caleb Martin, a player they really wanted, this was the much more expendable player than, say, najimarshall. Than, say, najimarshall, I think, is the most obvious example here. So one thing, what Quentin Grimes has been doing in Philly is incredible. It is not what anybody expected, even us, even the most optimistic people. It's also very heavily based in the isolation. And I think that's an interesting thing to point out. So he has been taking like 23% of his possessions have been pick and roll ball handler stuff, and he's still not succeeding at that all that well. His points per possession is 0.84. His effective field goal percentage is 44.3. That's very low for effective field goal. He's turning it over almost 1 out of 5 possessions. Now, on the 11%,
including that final play last night before overtime,
on the 11% of possessions that he chooses for isolation, he is averaging 1.24 points per possession.
Oh my God, he is absolutely cooking.
He is also averaging 1.25 on spot ups. He is shooting
on spot ups. Jesus,
almost 69% effective field goal percentage on isolations.
Wow.
Damn. Only turning it over about 10% of the time.
He's just on a heater.
He's on
that is
epic
incredible.
heater. Wow.
Now,
some would call that linsanity, but
Dallas before the trade, Dallas before the Luka trade was not an isolation team. Or they were a pick and roll team that bled into isolations for their superstars. But they were not an isolation team for their role players. This is not something that they did a lot. When they did it, they would go to Spencer Dinwiddie. And Quentin Grimes obviously got some chances to play in the pick and roll to see if he could do that. He flashed moments. There was good passes he made. He would also have pretty bad-looking turnovers. And I think, my opinion, is that Jason Kidd early on decided that when Dallas had to go to a isolation player, not by one of the 2 superstars on the team, that he would rather it go to Spencer Dinwiddie, who might just miss a contested 3, might miss 7 of them. But to him, that was bad. That was a better option than the catastrophic turnovers that here and there Quentin Grimes would have. I never agreed with that from the start. I thought it was clear that Quentin Grimes, as he's showing now, had some self-creation juice, even if you just gave him the ball and let him create from isolation. There are moments still in Philly, still in the game he played against Dallas, where it looks rough. There was the almost, yes, it was reviewed, Naji foul of him that was nearly a block. Could have easily gone as a block. But it was reviewed and there was just enough contact. There are moments where he bites off a little bit more than he knows how to chew. I'm curious to see if this is something he's going to keep refining and keep getting better at. And maybe there is legitimately like a 20-point ceiling on this player. I don't think he's going to be an all-star, but I didn't think he was going to do all this. I am thinking a lot.
All-star either.
I am thinking a lot about, 100%. I am thinking a lot about the idea. And it's probably an idea that I said on some point at the show that, once you made the Luka trade, Caleb Martin makes more sense on this team. And I'm really questioning that logic at this point. Quentin Grimes, if you add a Caleb Martin to a team with Luka and Kyrie, you needed a wing defender. And if you have two shot creators, you can survive what we've seen from Caleb Martin, which is that he's a very hesitant shooter, that he is going to be very similar to a Najee Marshall when it comes to his three-point shooting. I think that's safe to expect based on what we've seen so far, what we've seen in Philly. Yes, he's had some insanely hot stretches for entire postseasons, but he's also had shoulder injuries since then. Like that's a big, when I talked to PHL Wise, Kyle Neubeck, he talked about how the shoulder injury was something that is affecting Caleb Martin's shot. This is a kind of spotty shooter. And so when Dallas built a team that all of a sudden was supposed to be Kyrie Irving, Klay Thompson, potentially Caleb Martin, it seems like, Anthony Davis, Derek Lively Jr., the second, all of a sudden you're signing up for a team that almost has three non-shooters. One reason that Quentin Grimes is succeeding in isolation heavily in Philly is that they're playing 5 out. Every single person can shoot. You see so many instances of him just taking a few steps back, going at his guy, getting past his guys in ways that I am floored by. He's insanely athletic. That first step is wild. But there's nobody at the rim. You do see that a lot. You have to admit that this is something that's contributing to his success. Then again, one thing that we wondered about the team after the Anthony Davis trade is Kyrie is being asked to do so much. And who is going to spell him? Are you just going to play more Spencer Dinwiddie? Are you going to play... I kind of feel, the more I think about that, Quentin Grimes was the perfect person to put next to Kyrie Irving, can still defend, gives you a little bit of isolation scoring. And then if you also have a Klay Thompson out there, it made sense that, if they could have developed him, if Jason Kidd was willing to give him some sort of role that allowed him to use this ability that we're now seeing in Philly, but it's not like he got traded and just to learn how to do this. We saw the flashes of this we saw the game against Cleveland.
Yeah.
We've seen the moments of him absolutely able to do this. And I just don't think that was ever allowed by Dallas. I don't think that was something that Dallas ever was interested in letting him do. And as we see, we only saw it in flashes. They saw, they had a much better understanding of what he could do as a player. And it does look a little bit more damning, both looking at the team construction, looking through the stretches they went, where Spencer Dinwiddie was, the guy creating everything. I don't think that everything Quentin Grimes is doing in Philadelphia right now is what he could do in Dallas. And I do think that his isolation style that he's succeeding with right now was something that Dallas was going to have to trust in a way that they weren't willing to. It wasn't going to be replicable one-to-one. But the more you see it, the more you wonder, man, I would love to see exactly how they came to this conclusion.
Sure.
That Quentin Grimes could not be trusted in a role just a little bit more like what we're seeing in Philly.
Let's thank our television audience for joining us here on the DLLS Mavs Podcast. Remember, visit alldlls.com to become a diehard member here at DLLS Sports. The best way you can support us here is to like, comment, and subscribe to DLLS Sports. And also remember that our pregame show begins at 5:30 tomorrow when the Mavericks get ready to take on the Indiana Pacers. As we continue here on the DLLS Mavs Podcast, let's respond to some of that because I see our guy Kirk Henderson in the chat. Shout out to him. I see a lot of you in the chat. By the way, we'll pull my Blake Griffin off real quick. Hola, Mexico. I see someone joining us here from Mexico as well. So shout out to you for joining us here on the DLLS Mavs Podcast. The idea, Bobby, that PJ Washington is the wing defenders. Some of the other thoughts in terms of Caleb Martin, in terms of the kind of player that he is at this stage in his career, and obviously hindsight being 2020, and we're seeing what Grimes is doing in relation to the lack of games that we've seen Caleb Martin coming back from the injury. Just your thoughts on that, given what the state of the team is, the roster construction, and what they were trying to intend when making a move like this.
I mean, I don't know what they were trying to do. I think that what they were trying to do was more financial than anything. Grimes is a restricted free agent. The Mavs are already up against the apron going into the summer. Granted, the financial situation would. This thing keeps breaking. Whatever. Their financial situation is different, given AD's contract extension kicks in next year, whereas Luka's would have been on the year later. So your financial commitments are increasing in the short term in the wake of that trade, and so you're much more likely to go into the first apron and even push toward the second apron, and that's even without keeping Grimes. So very clearly they didn't want to re-sign him. Otherwise they would have pushed harder to do so before the season, or they would have just kept him and offered a wink that they will take care of business after the season is over. Obviously there was a gap between the coach and the player, and so that didn't happen. Personally, I don't really have a problem with not paying Grimes. I don't really have a problem with trading him for a guy that's cost controlled. I don't really have much of a problem with Caleb Martin. I think he's a fine player.
He is their best wing defender. I agree with that.
Yeah, no, I think he's solid, and you're going to need fouls and minutes in the scenario where you're in the playoffs. You're going to need fouls and minutes on guys like Shea and maybe less so the Nuggets, but certainly many other teams that are near or at the top. You're going to need someone that can guard Luka. And so, there's a reason to want a guy like that. But I think, Nico gave a little bit of insight in his post-Luka trade press conference whenever he used the word archetype. Like, it's very clear that the Mavs have archetypes of players that they want. They either want you to be a ball-handling scoring guard, they want you to be a wing defender type, or they want you to be a big man that dunks.
Or if you knew Nico.
Well, and Grimes isn't really any of those kinds of guys. Yeah. In the traditional sense, he's not a ball handling scoring guard. He's on an epic heater right now.
Guard. That's what he's showing.
Yeah, well, that's not maybe he's done it for 10 games. So maybe he is. Maybe he is. Now,
to some extent, he is.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, he has demonstrated the ability to do that in a short period of time. Granted, at a really high level on a team with no other guards. Which right now the Mavs don't have a lot of guards, so it is kind of ironic. But I understand why the team wouldn't necessarily value that skill set in a player if you're under the impression, Tim, like you said, that you already have Luka and Kyrie. You don't need another one of those guys. You have two of the best in the world at doing that, if not the two best, outside of Shea or something. But once you trade Luka, then that skill set does become a little more valuable. But clearly they traded him, so they either don't value that skill set, they don't value that archetype, or they don't value it at the level that a financial commitment it would take to retain that player. In which case, either way, I'm fine with trading him. What I'm not fine with, if you're already up against a pretty harsh financial reality, is trading a pick that would become a player that makes like $1 million a year. That just is it's inconceivable to me. So, I mean, that's kind of how I feel.
Let's get these jokes off real quick before we get out of here, because this is a good one from Charlie Saturday. I think I figured it out, gentlemen. Caleb is a biblical name. The Bible contains many stories about snakes. A mamba is a type of snake. Caleb Martin equals mamba mentality.
That's out of my area of expertise.
Sounds like you solved it, Charlie. Sounds like you solved it.
But if KG is on board, then I'm on board.
I thought it was just pretty funny, to be honest with you.
John P.
John P. Is this a super chat? Oh, okay. Okay, cool. Okay, yeah.
Been looking for a Mavs group for a long time, and this is the best I've ever found. I recommend becoming a diehard for anybody who hasn't. The Discord is great, too. Completely worth the money.
Thank you for saying that.
Thank you so much.
I agree, dude. The Discord is awesome.
Thank you so much.
The Discord is awesome. And that is like a community-led thing. Yeah. Like, we don't spend enough time in that, in my opinion.
I keep telling myself I'm going to be in there more, and I keep meaning to, and I'm going to follow through on that commitment. But every time I pop in, I love it.
If you're a Stars fan, too? Oh, my God.
It's WrestleMania season, and we got a wrestling portion in there, too. So, you boys right there. Shout out to TJK TV with the $2 super chat.
TJK, what's good?
AD will be clear for April 9th. LOL.
Maybe. I mean, I think if he doesn't play before then, there's no reason to bring him back. Obviously, it's against the Lakers, but but if he doesn't play, that's game 80 of the year or 79. Like
that's right.
At that point, there is no reason to bring him back. Yeah. If he's not back by then, he's definitely not playing that game.
No.
And IMO.
Did you just do the whole, in my opinion?
That's shorter. We're already in overtime.
Are we? As we appreciate all of you joining us here on our show today. Thank you so much for the comments and engagement on our show. We sincerely appreciate that. If you missed anything, make sure you go back and listen to the podcast as well. Wherever you get your podcasts for free, search DLLS Mavs on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there as well. And the best way you can help us grow the show is to subscribe to DLLS Sports, over 19,100 strong in terms of our subscriber count here at DLLS Sports. We're moving that much closer to 20,000 subscribers. So we want you to join our family here at DLLS Sports. We will be back tomorrow as the Mavericks take on the Indiana Pacers. Tip off at 6 p.m. Our pregame show will be at 5:30 p.m. right here on DLLS Sports. Big one, as the Mavericks remain now just one game ahead of the Phoenix Suns for the final play-in spot. With the Suns win last night, they moved to within one full game of the final play-in spot in the Western Conference. They'll be in action as well when they take on the Bulls tomorrow night. So shout out to our CHGO folks who will be watching that game. But our pregame show again will begin at 5:30 p.m. tomorrow right here on DLLS Sports with our postgame show 15 minutes afterwards. We'll be joined in studio by our National NBA insider, Marc Stein, as well. Appreciate our guy Marc Stein for joining us on the show today. Thank you to Tanner, our producer, for making this look good and sound good as always. Appreciate you, sir. That is our Mavericks analyst, Bobby Carrillo. That is our Mavericks beat writer, Tim Cato. I'm your host, Kevin Gray. We are DLLS Mavs. We'll talk to you tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. right here on DLLS Sports. Y'all be good. We'll talk to you later. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.